So I went back to a dealership to be an automotive technician. What was I thinking? So first off, I want to say if you are new to my channel, thanks for watching. And if you are a returning subscriber, thank you so much for watching another one of my videos. Whether you're just out there and you're just wondering what I'm doing in life, and maybe because I moved out of my old town, you just want to check up and see what I'm doing for a living and how I'm making money, which in my life is kind of tough. My scenario and my choices and my different circumstances I have to go through, and I won't even get into that. Anyway, I will say I'm going to basically talk about what I just experienced at a dealership as basically kind of starting off, transitioning into this dealership as being a lube tech, and why I would never do it again for someone else. If I could do it myself or in a small garage, I would continue it on, and that would also exclude some of the big labor intensive jobs, because that's one of the reasons why I got out of it in the first place. So here we go back 20 years ago when I started off at a small Buick GMC Pontiac dealer at the time. I'm going to talk about basically when you got hired, how you actually started off as an apprentice and worked with somebody else and moved up. And I'm going to talk about today. I'm also going to talk about how generations changed and why some of these things are done at the dealers. And I'm also going to talk about not only are you a mechanic now, you are basically doing the service writer's job, which I'm going to get into, and it's even funnier. And you also basically have to have everything on a checklist anymore, where there was things back then that you basically learned them and your checklist was up here when you were looking at the vehicle. So a lot has changed with that, and I'm going to get right into this. So first, I'm going to make it short and sweet of my experience at the Pontiac Buick GMC dealer that I actually started off now it was about 20 some odd years ago. And basically, once I left lawn and garden when I was a night supervisor, how I kind of transitioned from one job to another and how you got trained on this job. And I did, keep in mind, I did have a background of mechan tech. I went to school there, and it was half academics and it was actually half automotive. So that was my high school. So I did have some automotive experience, but I was out of it for a while. I actually got out of high school and I went back to get my GED because I dropped out of high school my senior year. And the funny thing is about that is I actually dropped out of high school, and me and my ex-girlfriend actually went back. We both got our GEDs together, and it was actually tougher for me to get my GED because half of my high school was academics and half of my high school was automotive. So where do you think my knowledge was most of the time? Obviously, all of us guys out there, the enthusiasts especially, that's why we were picking a certain shop when we were in this school. So basically, I'm going to talk about the dealership that I started off at. My first day I walked in there, and simple as can be, I had somebody that was going to guide me and show me how to lift a car up and give me the sequences that everything had to be done with being a lube technician, and that's basically what everybody had started off as, being an apprentice. So I got in there, and not only did someone show you, but my old boss at the time, he'd actually had like a lube technician list on what you wanted to perform and what sequence or order you were going to do it in on the lift post. So basically you get in there and it would say, on the list it would say check under hood fluids, and then it would say, safely lift the car up onto the hoist. And at the time we'd actually lift it like basically a few inches off the ground, and you would shake the car to make sure it was safe. So if it was going to fall, it'd fall 2 inches from the ground. So you do like a bump test, and then you moved on from there and you get the car up in the air, and then you basically started this inspection of all the stuff that was written on the list. And basically, once you had done the inspection that was on the list, it kind of just, over time, it just stuck to you, and you realized you didn't even have to look at the list anymore. So it was always stuck right in your head, to the point where it was basically maybe about a month in there, and then you knew what you had to check. You were looking at tires, you were looking at the brakes, you were looking for leaks, you were looking under the undercarriage, you were looking for things that looked abnormal, all that kind of stuff. So had things changed, and there's another thing I'm going to get into about now. We actually have these technicians, and they have either an iPod or some kind of a phone, and now you are actually taking a video of the customer's car while you're underneath it to show them what's wrong with it. So I'm going to get into that later on and talk about it, why it's really good and why it is really bad. So again, kind of going back into my first dealership 20 years ago, basically after you had done the checklist, and say I was there for like 6 months, or anybody that was there, even if they were just new starting off and they were mechanically inclined, they didn't go to a school or anything like that, after about 6 months, you kind of, by then, you actually had it in your head, the checklist, and you had a scenario down and a sequence and how you were actually going to do it. And you'd bring the car in, and every day you would kind of start off underneath the hood. You would start off by checking all the fluids, and of course you would fill the washer fluid, and this was a convenient thing they would do for the customers with a service or a lube oil filter, whatever you want to call it. So you would actually start off, and then you'd get the car up in the air, and you'd find the sequence. And once the car was up in the air, you'd find everything and gather it in your head that was actually wrong with the car. And then you would put the car down, basically take the mileage, and you put the car back outside, and you would come in and you'd have what they call a repair order. And a repair order is basically a piece of paper that the service manager, service writer, he or she gives it to you, and it tells you what you need to do on the car or what's wrong with the car, and it states, the cause or the concern of the what is wrong with the car. And then you go, you either test drive it or bring it in, you kind of go from there. And then once you've found the concern or you've done whatever task needed to be done on there, you basically write on there everything you've done, what you found with it. If you found, say you saw it had an exhaust leak when you brought it in, it was loud, and you said the muffler was leaking at the back by the intermediate pipe, and you note that on there. Or say you saw, 4 tires and the tires were worn and needed alignment and that such. So you would actually write all that stuff down there, and then you would hand this RO, you'd punch off of it. So you get your time and you'd give it to the service manager or service writer. He or she would actually take this, and basically they would take all the information that you would wrote on there, and they would either type it up and kind of get it ready to give to the customer for what was actually needed to tell them, or they would call the customer with everything that you're writing, and then we would do the repairs. They bring the car back in, and they would take the repair order, and now they would actually go in and type it all back up. So when the car was finished, the customer had a nice, clean, typed up repair order with what the cause was and how it was fixed, or what needed to be done and what was done, and it went from there. And that's how I'm going to tell you in a minute here, basically all the new scenarios of how it works now, and it makes the tech's job twice as hard, and it makes the people in the office's job a lot easier. And I'm going to tell you why it's actually convenient and why they do it, and why there's reasons why they do it, and I don't think they should do it, and I think it's ridiculous, really. And anybody that's looking at this, that you're an automotive tech, maybe you like it and maybe you don't. Comment, let me know what you think. So talking about the videos that I mentioned earlier, so now you're required to take an iPod or iPad or your phone, and you're required to record a video of the customer's undercarriage of their car. So you walk around and you say, "Hi, my name is Kurt. I am a technician working on your car today." And you go to your tires and you say, "Your tires have got 4/32 in the rear tires," and you show the tire. And then you go to your front tires and you do the same. And then you go and if you get the tires off for a tire rotation, you show your brakes, and you can point at the brake pad and actually show the customer what, most of these customers that are actually coming in here may not even know what a brake pad looks like. So you can take your pen and you've got your video right there, and you're actually going to show the customer their brake pad, and they have a visual so they can see if it's really thin or thick. And while this is very convenient, I could also see if this falls into the wrong hands and there's a couple of cars out there, I can see that somebody could actually do some, I could say it would be a bad thing too, because they could actually sell stuff that's not needed by taking a video that may not necessarily be on your car, but the video is given to you. So, there's been shady mechanics out there. I can see that also going south with the videos. But again, talking about the video, well, it is convenient, and now that these customers are going to these dealerships and they're getting used to their video that they're getting of their car every time they come in there, I can see it's getting routinely, and they're going to want it. So it's going to transition into all these smaller shops and maybe some of these shops that are less trustworthy. Number 2. So as I mentioned earlier, there was a repair order, and you would actually go in there with everything in your head, and you would actually look over the car. And this is obviously beside the video and what they see. You will actually go on there and you will actually fill out a checklist, which is you are signed into this program on a computer, and you go down through every single checklist. And now that you go down to a checklist, if you have a brake inspection on there and the brakes are worn and it needs pads and rotors, now you as a technician, you have to actually sign into this program. You have to log into it, and you have to type in there about the brakes, and then there's codes and stuff for actually adding your parts in there. So while this is very convenient for the service writers, because you don't even have to leave from your bay, you type everything in your computer and you put the parts in there. So now the parts get sent over to the parts department, and they can pull the parts, and everything that you are typing there, you don't have to walk this piece of paper over to the service department. They've already got it in there, and now they don't have to actually convert it. It's already typed in there. So now it goes to their side, and it's convenient for them because it's typed. So you are actually being a service writer at your toolbox or whatever, your workstation. And you are also looking up the parts or putting codes in there to bring the parts, so that the parts department knows for the specific car, whether it needs a light bulb, a brake pad, an alternator, you're breaking their job down, you're making their job easier. So that's one thing I do not like. Besides me not wanting to be an auto tech, and I have ways to make money on the side and to get by in the meantime, kind of, it's a little scary in life because I really don't know if I'm always going to have money, and life does happen. But I knew if I went another day doing that with everything that was added into it, I couldn't deal with it. Like, I didn't want to deal with it. So I recently worked a retail job, and basically everything at the cash register was going back to, if I was going back to lawn and garden when I was working at Walmart, where it was just cash and the beginning of a card, there was so much technology put into this, and it was intimidating, but like it just came to me so quick. Like, it was instant. But now going back to working on cars, adding the video in, adding the electronic repair order, and then adding the checklist, which you normally would do in your mind, which I didn't really get into, onto the computer so that everything was checked off. It was bogus. It was like, so they're just hiring anybody and they're making them put all this in there. It's like, kind of, I was at a short time, a short time I was at Walmart, and I was a lube tech there. And when you go into Walmart, not to get off topic, to be a lube tech, you basically are treated like any normal Walmart employee. Like, you start from like the minimum. So everything is torqued to spec, like the vehicle is driven, the lug nuts are torqued 3 times, you have to sign off of it. Like, they are extra cautious because they're just throwing anybody in there. Nobody has any training, they will train them. Like, the lift pads have these extra big things on it. It's almost like bumpers at a bowling alley when you go to Walmart to work on cars. So it's kind of transitioning to some of the things I actually saw when I was working at Walmart as a lube tech. They have to take anybody that's out there today, whether it be a young kid, mostly probably younger guys or younger girls, and if they didn't go to school, they're going to try to adapt them and train them into the world. And I just see everything like being totally crazy, especially with everything that's going on, and I'm trying to transition into EVs. Like, I just feel as though when you see these memes on Facebook that knowledgeable people are being silenced so stupid people don't feel stupid, I just feel like this is part of what's happening in life. And comment, let me know. I really don't care if you like my opinion or if you don't like my opinion, and maybe you think it's good. Comment, let me know. Let me know what you think, if you're just a customer watching this or just somebody watching this that's maybe you're just thinking about going back to a dealership or something. Comment, let me know what you think. And again, thanks for watching. If you are new, consider subscribing.